Party with your host, Dustin Rybka.
Hello and welcome to Sex Party. I'm your host, Dustin Rybka. With me on the show this week is Emm Cheeky. Emm is a sex educator. She's a sex positive activist. She has been talking for over 100 days consecutively on her Instagram about sex every day. What has she learned? What has she been shocked by? We're going to dive into that experience with her. Also, we talk heavily about sexual censorship on Instagram and how it's probably affecting you more than it's affecting me and how damaging it's going to be in the future. We talk about religion and the church and the shame, the sexual shame that is brought on by those institutions, and how Emm freed herself from the shame she was feeling from religion. It's an amazing episode. You guys are going to love this one. So without further ado, enjoy my conversation with Emm Cheeky.
This week's conversation.
Emm Cheeky, welcome to Sex Party. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm great. How are you?
I am wonderful. I could have slept a bit better last night, but that seems to be my curse as a vampire, is that I just can't stay asleep. So other than that, though, everything's lovely. Yeah, you and I have tried to set this interview up for a while. We stayed with it. We stayed in there so we could provide the audience with a banger episode full of horniness and value.
Yes.
Maybe boost their sex life a little bit. But for the people who don't know who you are, and like the people who don't, they're not familiar with your work, could you talk a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Emm Cheeky. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a qualified sex educator, but I enjoy going by Pleasure Pixie at the moment, embodying that. And currently my work kind of revolves around starting discussions around sex and making sure people feel comfortable. There's nothing off limits. There's nothing to feel ashamed about. So I'm currently talking about sex every single day so that I hopefully inspire people to be able to do the same in just a small way.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things I think that grabbed me, caught my attention, caught my ear, caught my eye immediately on Instagram, right? It's like you're doing this thing where it's day, I think right now it's like day like 105 or something, or
Yes.
106 of talking
Yeah.
about sex. So tell me and the audience a little bit about what made you start that, and how long do you think you can keep this up?
Well, firstly, I think I started it because, one, being on Instagram and trying to talk about sex is so hard because of the censorship. And you constantly get disappointed and discouraged when you put work out there and Instagram's like, nope, not good enough. We're not going to show it to anyone. So that kept happening to me. I kept putting effort into things. And I was like, you know what? Fuck this. What's a way that I can quickly put a message out there and do what I want to do, and not even worry about the views? And I was like, I'm going to start a streak, because there's nothing more encouraging and motivational than a streak. And talking about sex is what I want to do. I don't want to mold myself into an Instagrammable version, or what Instagram deems okay. I don't want to have to censor words, and I don't want to have to make infographics that look pretty or subscribe to a certain type of aesthetic. So I was like, I'm just going to put out me talking about sex every day, and people can just tune in if they want to or if they don't. And hopefully I land on someone's page and one of the days helps them. So we are yet to see. I'm very competitive. So far we haven't missed a day, but hopefully I can keep doing it and then actually get paid to do it as like a full-time job, talking in panels and things. So that's the goal, is to do it every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the song, right? Let's talk about sex.
Yes.
Even though Instagram doesn't fucking allow us to even say the word nipple, right? And yeah, I think for me, running a sex podcast, the most frustrating thing in the world is I just think you say tit or ass or orgasm or gangbang or cum or whatever, right?
Yep.
and they're like, and they show it to 20 people. They give you a warning. No, right? But then you scroll your feed and it's Sex with Emily or Call Her Daddy. And I love those shows. Those shows inspired me to start mine. But
Absolutely.
then they have, 4,800 comments, 10,000 likes, and it's just rolling and rolling and rolling. And they're not bound by the same set of rules that we are. Like, how nuts does that make you? It makes me crazy.
It does. And I feel like it happens on a large scale like that. And it also happens on a smaller scale within communities in terms of how we talk about sex. Is often we see people censoring themselves, not even because of Instagram, but the conversations we are seeing are the ones that might seem, one, tame enough for Instagram, or two, so wild that it actually just generates positive comments or more comments, and Instagram's happy with that engagement. It's not reporting, it's people being like, yes, I love this, or not necessarily educational stuff, more just like gossip or really entertaining things. And then it's the educators who are getting stuck when we're trying to use scientific words, and we're not allowed to do that. So it does make me go crazy. But I do have hope that hopefully even the channels that are getting have a huge audience, start to broaden their horizons and actually engage in like educational conversations as well. Because that's honestly just so important.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly important. I mean, all the articles that have been written about it in the press about the censorship from Instagram. And I think that it's going to be more and more and more people are going to press forward on that. But like Wired magazine did a big article. I think there's another magazine, maybe Fortune, that did an article on it. And there's some independent writers that wrote about it. And they also did the same thing, that like, this is fucking dangerous because people get their sex education or lack thereof from Instagram, and they have a responsibility to allow this stuff and figure out a way to, just like when you would see something violent, right? And it's like, hey, like this, it's blacked out, and it's like, this post has been deemed, bloody, or someone's being decapitated or whatever. Do you still want to watch it? Whatever. There has to be a better way. And I think it goes beyond them just trying to like shield their advertisers and make more money. It doesn't make any sense.
Isn't it really just a matter of like having an 18 plus option? Like YouTube's there. Is there really not a button Instagram can press? Or are they really clinging on to, like you said, the advertisers and playing it safe, versus people over 18 deserve to get sex education and deserve to get it from people who are qualified or people who are responsible in sharing. And Instagram's just not really giving a fuck about it. And it's like, I don't understand the motive, and they do seem to always have these fake or false promises when big articles come out, and then nothing happens. If anything, they just clamp down even more on the people who are already being censored. So it's very frustrating.
Yeah, and like now the new thing they're doing is like they're like walling people off. So they'll be like, "Hey, your content can't be shown to anybody except for the people who already follow you. Sorry."
Me.
Right. So now they've walled off like sex creators like myself, and you can wiggle out of that and whatever. But I think like to the audience that's listening, that's watching right now, it's a disservice to them because they are not going to see or learn or whatever. And I think most people, when it has to do with their pleasure, with their understanding of their bodies, I think that they benefit from that. And the smart ones know that. Like, it's odd to me that I think we need the audience to get just as pissed as we are about it before it can change, really.
Absolutely. And it does kind of all lie on the audience at the moment, because like you said, your content can't be shown to people who don't follow you unless your followers repost and share your work, which is even harder when it's in the sex positive community, because there's a lot of shame attached to that. No one wants to admit that they're following me and they want or need sex tips, or don't have a full understanding of everything they could possibly know around sex. There's so much shame in that. So even just following a sex ed creator or sex positive creator feels a bit embarrassing sometimes. To then ask our followers to get angry and to then share us is like a big ask, but it is really, really necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I think hopefully like what I do on this show, even though like again, like my show's a bit chaotic, but we still provide value and whatever, and we just find a crazier delivery system to do it and have fun with it. And I think that
Yes,
like that's my way in, right? But I think that people, hopefully their quality of life is better from you and from shows like
absolutely.
mine, and it's just Instagram reminds it, Instagram is the new church. It's the
Yes,
new they're like burn the witches kind of bullshit. And
yes.
so we've given power to another. And the thing is like Instagram doesn't work without ass.
This
It
is
just doesn't.
true. Yeah.
Like Instagram was, is, and will forever be powered by ass.
Yes. But they don't want to admit
So
that
like
because that's like,
no, yeah,
Is it Mark? I don't even fucking know. Is it Mark Zuckerberg? I don't really give a
it
fuck, but it's
is.
run by a man.
It is.
So to admit that, the same with Twitter, same with OnlyFans, to admit that there's women they need to thank, and women's bodies, especially that they can't police, to thank for the success of their platforms is like a real bash to the ego. So, yeah.
Mhm.
What can you do? But I
Yeah.
know for a fact that your podcast and anyone talking about sex, you're doing the world of good for people, because I think we underestimate the power of conversational sex. It's conversation about sex. Like just seeing someone like yourself and your guests come on and talk about sex like it's literally anything else in the world. Like we are talking about what we're going to order for dinner and how your day was. And we're talking about it so casually. And that in itself gives people the power to be like, okay, I don't have to be ashamed about this. I don't have to be embarrassed about this. And that's the first step in like reclaiming your pleasure. So keep doing the good, hard work.
Well, don't put too much pressure on me. I could blow this whole thing. Yeah, and the other thing I want to say is let's not forget Mark Zuckerberg, the man who started Facebook, Meta, and bought Instagram and controls this whole thing. The only reason he started Facebook was to shame his ex-girlfriend and to pit women against each other. So
Yeah,
are we expecting Mark Zuckerberg to ever do the right thing when it comes to women? Come on.
exactly. No, we aren't. And we are just rolling with the punches. And the sex positive community is resilient, if I know
Mm-hmm.
and have learned anything. We stand for a huge fucking message. Sex education is like absolutely necessary in bringing down a whole lot of the shitty factors of the world. Like I'm from South Africa, one of the rape capitals of the world. And if we aren't installing and practicing and improving our sex education, the rape numbers are not going to go down. And that's just one of the bars that we can bring down when everyone has comprehensive or access to comprehensive and inclusive sex education. So we've got a big message to fight for, and I don't think Mark's in it. He's going to be in this fight for a long time, and it's a lot of us. But I think we all just got to find ways that we don't get disheartened. So that's why I'm not attached to my numbers. I'm not attached to the likes and the shares. I'm more so in the DMs, one-on-one. How can I help you? Where are you at? And have I made an impact? And that's where I'm at the moment. It's the only way I can continue, really.
Yeah, because how do you fight a fucking meat-loving android from wherever he's from?
Yeah,
So until we find his off switch,
exactly. He is a robot.
yeah, I mean, and Elon Musk is a fucking douche too, but at least he didn't take the nudity off of fucking Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it this week.
Oh, honestly, you really can't win. You really
No.
can't win, but we keep persisting. Just like me and you
Yeah.
with this podcast recording.
Yeah, and I think you said something incredibly important. Something I had to do when I launched the show is there was a boost right when I launched it. Oh my God, this idiot has a sex podcast, and everybody from my hometown was rushing to their, whatever.
Yeah,
But then it sort of dropped off and did this thing where it was sort of it was consistently consistent, but it was also consistently low for a matter of months. And I think that's normal, whatever.
yeah,
And now we're seeing because I think we're finally starting to hit, I don't know who the fuck we is, it's me. But
Yeah.
it's starting to catch and have success in places I never thought, and it's amazing and whatever. But I think you're totally right. Like you can't win, but the thing that you said that's even more important than that is like I had to detach from those numbers. Like when I saw, oh, this reel only got fucking 58,
Yep.
whatever, I'm like, first of all, they're fucking with me, and second of all, you know what? Fuck them. I'm going to put out 10 more. And so I just redouble my efforts every time they fuck around, because somewhere
Absolutely.
there's a loophole, and it's like we'll find that and we'll slither through that little crack like a snake and fucking start laying eggs,
Yes, we
whatever. I
will.
have no idea. Okay, so we tackled the parental advisory, discretion advised, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Let's jump back into this talk about sex every day thing really quick.
Yeah.
Like just off the top of your head, what have been like the 2 or 3 big ones that you've talked about that have gotten the most blowback, positive, negative feedback, like attention, engagement? Like what have you noticed? Because I know doing this show for a year and a half, there are certain topics that when I talk about them, like the numbers go crazy. But like, so what have you noticed in your 105, 106 days that talking about sex that have been the hits?
Well, firstly, I would like to say that there's like a good amount of people who, I don't know if this is the same people, obviously it might not be, but who show up almost every single day, which is incredible. So shout out to them because the numbers are consistent, which I am really grateful for. Like I said, not attached to them, but it is always cool to just see like your work paying off. But I will say the topics that normally spark interest or a rewatch are anal. We love to talk about anal. All of those things that are like a little bit more taboo. And then things that are like really scientific, like why you might not enjoy penetration as much as your partner with a penis if you have a vulva. And it's things coming down to like the things you should have been taught in school that you weren't afforded. And now I'm telling you this, and you're like, oh my God, that's what this is called. And like my anatomy, like I think I posted one like, can you name your vulva? Can you name all these parts? And I think that got a lot of rewatches because people were like, I don't know if I can label all my parts. So yeah, it's been really interesting. It is a research in itself, and I will like to compile, more statistical response to that question because I think it would be really interesting.
Oh, I'm sure you will. I already know that intuitively. That's where this is
Yeah.
headed, is some sort of like book or like whatever overall like case
Yeah.
study or something. And that's great. And I mean, I think obviously you can go forever on that. And even if you miss a day, right? Like just double up the next day. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what you're doing, I think, is really, that's what drew me to you. And that's what made me say, okay, I have to get her on the show, because you are tackling these subjects, and you never know what's coming next.
Yeah.
You could be talking about like having your period or like having a threesome or like whatever, right?
Yeah.
What topics have got like a negative reaction, like with trolls or like with people like not interested? Like what would you say?
I honestly, I'm very lucky to say that I haven't really got any negative responses. I think that is also down to the fact that I don't fall onto the wrong For You page or the wrong reels discover because I'm not discoverable. So I kind of only have the people there that want to be there. And of course, I'm sure there are people following me just to critique or to make fun of me or to do any of that stuff like, oh, she's talking about sex, how embarrassing. But for the most part, I don't ever find negative comments. I do have strange DMs, I will say that.
I bet you do.
The other day I was looking through them and I lost my sausage dog the other day. God bless him. And I had all these like requests saying like, oh, I'm so sorry, like take your time. And then like before that, it was like, I want to destroy you. I want to show you I want to change your mind about this. And I'm just like, oh my God, if I could just share this with your name or, oh, it's just very interesting how people think they can say whatever they want to you in your DMs because you're a sex educator or open, like not a public figure in any sense of the word, but just putting your word out there. And I think they can just say whatever to you in the DM. So I'd say that's as far as it goes, but wouldn't say it's negative.
Well, first of all, why can't you share it with their name in it? Why not? I do it all the time.
I think Instagram, one, I don't really have the energy to compile that because it would be a list. And it doesn't really take up that much like headspace for me anymore. And more so I've seen like a lot of the time with sex ed creators, like we get unsolicited dick pics in the DMs and you try to report that and then you get you get the consequences of reporting them or sharing it or like even blurring out the picture and the name and everything. Instagram's still like no. So I don't really trust Instagram to protect me or to have my best interest in at heart at any point, even if I am being harassed on Instagram, which thankfully I'm not. But like I said, I just don't trust Mark.
Yeah, well, he's not real. So yeah.
He's not.
He's here to destroy humanity through sexual he's trying to just
Oppression.
yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I mean, and well, that was my first point. It's like, why can't you? Because you just screenshot and send it, and and just leave the name in there and be like, Tom is confused, guys, or whatever. But
Yeah.
you do you. The reason why I'm suggesting is because that is actually one of my pet peeves. Something I cannot stand is if someone is if a woman is an OnlyFans creator, a sex worker, a sex educator, whatever,
Yeah.
then for some reason these like dumb like red pill like hillbilly
Yeah.
men think that they can just like walk on up and like grab your asshole at a concert or like send you their dick or like whatever that is, and they're like, well, you're a sex creator. It's like it's not a green light to fucking
Yeah.
send me your small fucking penis, bro.
No,
And so I
absolutely.
hate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I
I
can't
agree.
cannot imagine being a woman, let alone in the sex space. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just fried. So
DMs are
so
wild.
hats off. I bet. But like one day you should hire someone to go through and compile and like edit the
Yes.
nudity and
Okay.
then dump it.
I will. I do think
Yeah.
that would be I do think that would be entertaining and it
Mhm.
would be good to look back on over the
Yeah,
years.
roast those
So
fuckers.
for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And so what have been like one or two of your absolute favorites that you've done? And maybe you have some where you like, you had a day where you like learned something that were like, wow, okay, shit, like researching this, I found out
Yeah.
I like this or this is interesting or like whatever. Like what are a couple facts or pieces of information that you really resonated with you personally?
Yeah. Well, when I was in Greece, I felt like, so I am traveling at the moment and I have tried to at least every now and then try to look up on the culture or get some like base level understanding of the sexual health and the sex education in the countries. And in Greece, I learned that for the last like 10 years, Greece has been the country that has the most sex.
Mm.
But the conversation that sparked after that was that obviously quantity doesn't mean the most satisfied nation in the world is going to be Greece. Like that, those are different statistics. And it's interesting when we talk about sex, we always bring up quantity and frequency. And when I was in Greece and talking to Greek people, the culture there is quite intense. I feel like the men I was always looked at walking around. I always felt not unsafe, but I didn't feel respected. I didn't feel it's a very interesting country. And to then look at the statistics where it says they're the country that has the most sex, I was like, who is having sex here and who's having sex done onto them and because the women I spoke to there were quite shocked at that statistic, but the men were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I was like, oh, so there seems to be an inequality here in satisfaction or in understanding of how much sex everyone is having in terms of like male, female, who's being satisfied, all of that stuff. So I'd say that was an eye-opening moment for me.
Yeah, I mean that's really really interesting, and I always heard those rumors about Greece, and even like there was, I don't know, like I remember being younger in my like late teens, early 20s, and hearing from like a female friend like, oh, like every time I date a Greek dude, like they're the dudes that are like most into anal and whatever. Who knows if that's fucking true? She was probably
Yeah.
on drugs, but um but like you do hear that it's like horny, you know, and everyone's like
Yeah.
goes to Mykonos and like whatever. So do you think that it's because the men are much more aggressive, so then there's just more sex happening? Because I feel like American dudes are pretty consistent, you know, hey baby, hey baby, hey baby. And then if you like look at
Yeah.
your DMs, like, hey, 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 slut, hey, 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 you know, like
Yeah.
whatever. So I can't imagine. Are they? Is it more of like it's smaller, so they're approaching, or like what? Like, let's break this down a little bit. Why would that be?
Yeah. I mean, I obviously can't speak for the entire Greece. I spoke to quite a few people, but I wish I could have spoken to more and done more thorough research when talking about it. But just from like my travels around Eastern Europe, and down into Greece, you do feel like an entitlement, of men towards women. Just, like normal patriarchal. It's quite, not backwards, but it isn't progressive enough. You do still see like Greece is still very much reliant of tourism and all of that stuff. So lots of the children don't end up finishing school, or there's an option. It's very normal to just go and work for your family or work in tourism. And talking to those children, they don't then grow up having sex education if they leave and decide to work in tourism, which means they just kind of learn about sex through media, and there's no opportunity for them to change what's happened in the past generations in
Mm.
terms of like men being entitled to women, or men being more aggressive, or men having the most sex, and or always being the initiators and stuff like that. So I think that has a huge impact when children aren't given an opportunity to reverse what's happened in the past. So I think that's why maybe they've been so consistent over all this time. And yeah, I don't know. It is really interesting. And like I said, I
Yeah.
wish I knew more. I wish I knew more, but I don't think it stems from a very not consensual but mutual thing.
Mm,
Just because
mm.
of the way I know women feel walking around Greece, you just feel like you really, wherever you are, it's a bit of catcalling, it's a bit of staring, gawking, um, and it's all the men sat out in the streets having a coffee, and all the women behind the coffee bars making coffee. So it does still feel quite, it's just not progressing fast enough, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know the thing that's interesting to me, and I would love to get your perspective on it as a sex educator, right? So like ancient Greece or ancient Greek culture, like the gods, right? Like the Greek gods, like we're all somewhat familiar, insanely sexual, right?
Yes.
And like I can't really, I'm not an expert, right? But like you know,
Orgies.
Zeus, yeah, Zeus and the orgies and like whatever. So like maybe like some of that trickled down a little bit too, or like,
Uh, I'd like to think it would, but I think with all of the cultures where like the ancient wisdom, we see it all the time in African cultures, throughout the entire world, we see sexuality and women's bodies and curves and all of these things being celebrated. And then we have religion coming in and being like, no more, none of this, shame,
right.
repression. So I think that's the same thing because Greek culture is heavily Orthodox. So religion becomes and plays a part in that and adds a layer. So there's a lot of shame. They don't talk about it at all, as with many cultures, obviously not just Greece. So I think we'd love to think that um, Greece maybe pulls on from their ancient history of like these huge Greek orgies. But I just don't think that's the case. I think religion came in and just cut it off
Yeah,
at yeah, unfortunately.
right. Here we go with the fucking parental discretion advised sticker again. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sensing an episode title. Who knows? This might be, we might have already found the episode. But I mean, you know, the censorship bit is just, it's just bonkers, right? And like we've hit it 2, 3 times now, but here it is in fucking with the church in Greece. Like you you cannot escape it anywhere. I mean, in your travels, have you found a place where that's more open and like fluid with their sexuality, meaning more peaceful and less catcally, and like you can not wear a shirt on the beach and like whatever? Like have you found that place yet?
Well, I think we as in the sex education, we always talk about the Netherlands. The Netherlands are doing great things in terms of not just like being open as adults and allowing people to explore their sexuality safely, and not like, looking at people funny for what they wear or who they're kissing and who they're holding hands with, but really like actually tackling the problem in schools and allowing people access to comprehensive sex education, and to making sure everyone is seen and educated for whatever option they want to go into, and giving kids that sense of like accountability and responsibility around their sexuality really then is a ripple effect into their adulthood, where they're like, oh, I know the consequences of this, I know the weight of this, and I'm actually going to wait or hold off. And then we see that again ripple down into when they do start having sexual encounters, them actually thinking about it more, holding off a bit longer, and then in their adulthood feel like they can express themselves safely. So the Netherlands are great. I think I've always felt like the safest walking around Amsterdam. They have the red light district where they basically you can just walk in and find a sex worker there. So the shame, the taboo is really getting tackled there. And with the rest of like Western Europe, I think Western Europe is doing a lot better, like Portugal, Spain, France. They seem to be more open-minded. And then Eastern Europe seems very much heavily affected by the church. There's still deeply religious narratives happening there. So I'd say the Netherlands are probably best. I was in Romania, and that was a bit interesting. And Bulgaria, very heavily affected by the church, which again, like you said, is just another form of censorship, another form of policing, and just a whole lot more shame for young people to work through. Young people who then become adults who still can't work through the shame, and then just put that shame on more young people. So yeah.
Yeah, it's this fucking cycle. What were they doing in Romania? Just like chasing you through the street or what?
Romania felt like it really felt untouched by the Western world or like any form of like technological advances. There were touristy bits, but then the non-touristy bits like just felt, you walk through the streets and see lots of people wearing like the full, I don't want to say nuns because I don't think that's what they were, but and there's loads of churches, lots of churchgoers, which is great. And I know the church and sexuality can coexist. I haven't really seen it work, but I've been told. And I know people are fighting that fight, but I know it can coexist. But like in Romania, it just felt really back in time. And I think most places that aren't advancing are going to feel like that, because the whole world had this blanket of religion come down and feel like, oh, we're not allowed to have sex before marriage. We're not allowed to get divorced. We're not allowed to say or have sex for pleasure. The whole thing about having sex just to reproduce blows my mind. So if these countries aren't seeing what is possible elsewhere because they don't have Wi-Fi, or because, like I said, just schools aren't advancing quick enough, then they don't really know what they're missing out on, and you don't really see like a protest happening for it, or an activism happening in these countries for a more comprehensive, inclusive sex education or sexual well-being in their countries. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like there are. I mean, obviously, there's places that are way worse, right? But like,
Yeah.
Those like places had to have been like walled up, with religion for a long time, small villages or whatever. Like, it just, it feels like the walls of the church are like they trap you. So I've never heard of a great experience with sex and religion coexisting at all, like whatsoever, and I think I'm someone who's like incredibly against organized religion. I've always had
Yeah.
had a problem. The same problem I have with authority is the same problem I have with religion. You know what I mean? Which is
One
why
and the
Instagram
same.
and I don't get along. Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in all of this, right? Like, what's your origin story with it? I mean, why sex? Why sex education? Was there something that you saw or an experience that you had, positive or negative, like when you
Yeah.
were younger? Was it? Did you see a movie? Did you? I mean, what really sparked that imagination enough for you to devote your life to this?
Yeah, well, funny we were talking about religion because
Mm,
I grew up in an atheist family, or not atheist, but not religious at all. And I kind of took on religion whilst dating a boy who was religious, and kind of took that on in like my early teens and got quite swept up in it. And throughout my high school, I was very much in it. I don't know if what you call it in America, but like I was like a deputy head of a society for Christianity. I'm so
mm.
embarrassed now, but anyway, so I used to be that girl who was like, come to church on Fridays, like da, 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 all of this stuff. And whilst being in a very long-term relationship with someone, and one of the first things that threw me off guard with Christianity or the church was we were a society, and the committee that ran it was of 5. There were 2 boys and 3 girls, and all 3 girls had had sex. Um, and the way our pastor, who was in charge of us, spoke about people who weren't waiting till marriage or who are actively sexual at high school, the way he spoke about it, I was just like, oh my God, I'm in the wrong place. Like, he's assuming just because, you know, we're Christian and we're running the show here, that we haven't had sex, and he's talking to us like that, and he's talking about actually who we are in a really awful way, really awful, shaming, not very godlike, you know, all are welcome way. And that really threw me. And I left high school and went to university, and I was like completely detached from religion then, and actually started talking to people, working through my own shame, because the shame I had whilst being in religion, and the shame I used to put on other people, like my partner, for not coming to church with me, or for masturbating, or for, you know, like all these strange things. And then I went to university and my eyes were opened, and I was like, oh wow, there is actually more to life than religion. And I now need to work through all the shame that got dumped on me. So yeah, I didn't masturbate till I was 20 because I had the fear of fucking God put into me. And then when I finally did try to do it, I was like trembling like a leaf. I was like, I'm going to hell, even though I no longer believe in it. But it was just so much to work through. So yeah, it's been my motivator. And now I just really enjoy seeing other people work through their shame just by hearing me talk about it, like at the dinner table or walking around on a shopping date with a whole lot of friends, and you see people open up and be like, oh, I actually have shame to work through too, and I can talk about it. So yeah, that's me.
That's incredible. And like, personal question, and you know, you never have to answer these, but like, when you did masturbate for that first time, you said you were trembling, and like, even though you didn't believe in hell, it had been like really
Yeah.
truly like shot into your mental, into your brain, into your DNA almost, right? And so I'm wondering if that fear and that defiant thing that you were about to do, did that then become like a kink or a turn on for you at first? Was it like, I'm not supposed to be doing this, and so it's hotter? Or was it like just genuine, like, I need to get over being scared?
I think for the first few times it was definitely like, I would say there was a level of fear, but then more, and then after the fear, once you push through that, and I think a lot of people find this not just in masturbating for the first time, but maybe it's having sex with the lights on for the first time, or for asking or standing up for yourself in the bedroom and advocating for your pleasure. All of these things at first are fear. And then once we push ourselves a little bit, we're like, okay, I can do it. It's not that scary. But then we're like, a wave of shame and disgust hits you, and you're like, oh my God, why would I want to do this? Like, isn't this only for like promiscuous people or people who are like really desperate in their like late 30s that don't have a partner to pleasure them? And it's all the education I didn't get to be like, oh no, masturbation and partnered sex, solo sex and partnered sex are called different things for a specific reason. They both have their place and are both valid. So I had to work through that uneducation and the misinformation I'd got. And then I think later on, I was like, oh yeah, I can fucking do this. Like, I'm a naughty girl. Like, take me to hell, all of that stuff. And it definitely did become more kinky. And I can play on that now that I've worked through it and I have a healthy relationship with masturbation. And I don't just have to use that as like a coping mechanism to pull me through. I know now that like I'm absolutely allowed to do this. I'm entitled to my own pleasure. This is my birthright. I'm allowed to access it in my own body for whatever reason, whenever I want to, whether I'm in a long-term relationship or I'm single. So, yeah, I would say it's a little bit kinky now, but it definitely fucking wasn't in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, the way you described it, I just knew it was in there somewhere, so I had to ask, and there it was. Like, drag me to hell, baby. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's so cool because it's like you're using this negative as a positive, right? Like you're literally getting off to the idea that you were told if you get off, you're gonna be drugged to hell. Like you'll like, you know what I mean? So like that to me is power. That to me is sexual liberation on
Absolutely.
its
Yeah.
and that's rock and roll, man. Like that's amazing.
Yeah.
So again, like more personal stuff. And you can always push the button. We're like, not gonna answer that.
We're all good.
But like how has being a sex educator, a sex positive activist, someone who learned and has gone through their paces on self pleasure, on pleasure, um, and the education that you have garnered along the way, the people you worked with, how has that changed what you're into? Right? Do you come across something where you're like, huh, I was going to talk about this today, but it's kind of turning me on. Like, do you have those moments? How much have you evolved since you decided I'm going to be a sex educator?
It's really interesting because I think when we think of people in the sexual health world, in sexual being, in sex education, sex work, we sometimes over sexualize them and think that, we're going to be sex crazy. And for the most part, I think now that I've, gone through a lot of research, been educated, read up a lot and all of that stuff, sometimes I find myself over analyzing and it's to like my own disadvantage, if that makes sense. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh, why didn't I enjoy that? And I sit there for too long, or I go too in depth with it or go over analyze and overthink it versus just being like, oh, that's okay. Like it's normal to have off days. It's normal to just be turned on by this. I don't have to go back into my childhood trauma to find the source and to understand it in order for me to enjoy it. So it's been like a two-sided coin where we think we're going to be like even more empowered, which I do think I am, but at the same time, like still overthinking things. So
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting that you say that because I've always been a sexual person. I mean, obviously, I started this podcast called
yeah,
Sex Party, and I've always like been really in tune with my desires and having lots of partners and all of the
yeah,
things. But then when you don't come as hard as you did the last
yeah,
time to that fantasy, or maybe it's like, fuck, I feel like this is taking way too long for me to like get off on this, or
yeah,
I'm not as turned on by the being a sexual person. You're right. You do feel that pressure that shit, something's wrong with me. Why didn't I
yeah,
not? Why? And you get trapped in that I mean, and I have like, OCD around it sometimes too, where I'll really start spinning. I have to like tell myself like, yo, who cares, dude? And then I'll snap out of
yeah.
it. But you're totally right. That's a thing.
Absolutely. And I think when we talk about sex education, we always come back to one, like educate ourselves, and then two, critical thinking. Like you've got to be up in your head for only a certain amount of time. And then you've got to actually say to yourself when your thoughts are, flowing really fast and filling up your head, you've got to be like, are these helpful? Like, do I really need to get into this right now? Or am I allowed to just have sex and I don't have to go into it and to understand every part of it? And I think that's sometimes why people step back from sex education, because they think as soon as they admit to not knowing one thing, they're like, Jesus, there's so much I don't know. It becomes overwhelming. And it's like, no, you can still enjoy the sex you're having without knowing, all of the work and the research that educators are going through. You don't have to know all of that stuff to have fun in the bedroom and to advocate for your pleasure. It's just small things that you can pick up by being like, oh, this feels good, I'll ask for more of that next time. Or, oh, no, this doesn't feel good, I don't have to try this again if I don't want to, type of thing. It's just as simple as that sometimes.
Yeah, and not every sexual person wants to go to a sex party or open their relationship or whatever. And maybe if you want to go to a sex party, you don't have to do anything. You can sit and hang out and have a cocktail and look hot
Absolutely.
and whatever, right? And you could do all that. And I think that you, because you said people assume, and then you think in your own mind, oh, I'm this big sexual person, so I have to do whatever. But you don't. You're right. Even it just, I think you really have to have those regular sort of conversations with yourself, and I think that'll tell you all you need to know. But even those can be kind of confusing. All that said,
Absolutely.
right? Are you a person who's going to sex parties? Are you in a monogamous, non-monogamous relationship? What does that look like for you?
Well, it's interesting because I think before I even answer that, sex positivity and the message we're trying to get across is not that to be sex positive, you have to be doing everything. You have to try anal. You have to go to sex parties. You have to be in an open relationship. Why don't you enjoy threesomes? Why don't you enjoy these out there fantasies? The point of sex positivity is to allow yourself to try everything and give yourself permission to enjoy those things, the things that you do, and then not shame anyone who enjoys the other things that you don't. So not yucking anyone else's yum. Sexuality and sex is this massive spectrum, and you're allowed to be anywhere on it. So it's just about allowing yourself to be like, oh, there's the menu. I'll have that, and I'll let myself try that one over there I'm not too sure of. And then if someone else is ordering that, you're not going like, oh, that's disgusting, I tried that and I hate it, or I'll never try that, that's so gross. It's more just being like, oh, cool, this is what works for me, and that's what works for you, and that's what sex positivity is all about. So to answer your question, I haven't gone to a sex party yet. I was too busy in London to get there. I really do want to go. And an open relationship is an interesting concept to me. I do think it's a really valid way to have a relationship. I think it's a beautiful way to have a relationship. I think it requires more communication, more trust, than just a normal monogamous relationship. I think people don't give it enough credit. If you can make an open relationship work with really open and honest communication and checking in with your partner, you're doing so much better than monogamy that don't check in with each other. So yes, I'm currently in a relationship, and potentially will play around with the idea of non-monogamy, but not at the moment, because I think with all non-monogamy exploration, it's not a thing you do that to save your relationship. It's not something you do to spice it up. It's something you do out of the mutual curiosity you both have after building a really, really strong foundation of trust and communication and understanding. So once we get there, then you can begin to explore it healthily and not as oh my God, how do I save this relationship? Let's fucking spice it up and bring a third person in. It's not going to work.
No, it's going to be the end. Yeah. But no, I want to thank you for that answer, because beautifully put, right? And that means a lot that you're saying it on the show, because I think a lot of people need to hear that building a foundation in a relationship before you start talking about bringing a third or going to a sex party or whatever it is, you have to have that trust. You have to know you have to really kind of talk until you're blue in the face. The thing that I think that people miss all the time, and we always talk about it on the show, is that non-monogamous relationships, polyamory, is a fucking ton of work. It's a ton of work. If you can't handle one person, come on, so I think that's brilliant the way that you answered that. And also from what I hear, the sex parties in London are like some of the best in the world. There's safe, there's hot people, there's all of that. So
there's lots of options. So if you are in London, there are a few that you can just quickly Google, find what works for you. There's a few like different vibes. And on non-monogamy, I just want to say that I think a lot of the time when we're wanting to explore like being with multiple people at one point or whatever, I think it's strange how people are so quick to judge not monogamous people opening up their relationship and less so quickly to judge people going from being single to just jumping into exclusivity immediately. And it's so weird as a society that we romanticize that more than the opening up of a relationship because of the trust. And we're like, okay, cool, but you can just completely throw your life away and jump into an exclusive and closed off relationship, where I would advise, if you are thinking about that and that's something you desire, rather hold it off to make sure that's really what you want. And in that period before, you can still be exploring with, what does it feel like to go on a date with someone else whilst this other person is here, to see if that's something you can potentially explore together with this new person. And if you do want to try an open relationship, please always be open and honest about that before becoming exclusive with someone. If you have the intention of one day opening it up and being curious about that, you deserve someone who's going to respect that and want to explore with you. Life's too short to not explore your sexuality to the fullest. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's gorgeous too. Thank you for saying that. The last question I have for you, a little topic question, whatever, to sort of wrap up this episode, because it's been chasing us, trying to drag us to hell this whole time, right? We talked about censorship in the church and like whatever, but you are someone who did feel like, hey, like I'm going to be drugged to hell here for masturbating, for going against the religion or whatever. So from someone who has been through it, right, and been through it to the degree that they now are motivated and empowered to educate and help other people find that, right? What is some advice that you would give to people, probably more, well, actually everyone, right? Because I was going to say more women than men, but like, and that might be the case, but like to everyone, like what is some advice from someone who's been through it and who teaches on it now? And it was such a moment in their life, to finally defeating that shame and moving past it. What would you advise them?
I just think it's funny how you were like, maybe not just to women, but I do think I can speak definitely to women or people who have grown up as a woman or under female stereotypes and especially when I look at religion, I'm always like, who is this helping? The whole sex before marriage thing. Like if we look at where it came from and we look at where it is now, we look at the messaging around, traditional weddings of giving a woman away and taking on a man's name and all of these things that are like rooted in religion and can be completely neutral now if you understand where they're from and the effects of them. But it's always like, just be a little bit cynical of the messages you are receiving from society, and from your religious leaders and all of these things. Have a little bit of like doubt. And I always remember being told that like doubt is honestly like one of the biggest superpowers, because if you're not doubting something, you're not questioning it, you're not advocating for yourself, you're not trying to get the best out of it for yourself. So just doubt as much as fucking possible, because I really wouldn't trust society as a whole to give you the correct messaging you deserve on what you deserve in terms of in pleasure, in sexuality, in sexual expression. I don't really see many, societies that have your best interests at heart. They're wanting to police you. They're wanting to create and keep this heteronormative narrative going. So if you're in religion or if you aren't, just be a little bit cynical of the messages you're being told. Who profits from this? Who is gaining from this? And that's kind of why I started drawing away, because I was like, no one's backing me here. Like no one's fighting for what feels good for me. And I just think be brave enough to take that step away and to go after what feels best for you, because it always pays off.
That you had like 3 in a row, like mic drop moment. So there'll be some clips coming out of that. But again, I want to thank you for being so intelligent, and also like being open and really like embracing what you're doing. Like, I'm a huge fan. They're going to be huge fans. Emm Cheeky, let's remind them. I flash forward to your second appearance on the show already. I'm coming back to the first. Let's tell them, right, instead of reminding them, where they can find you, where they can hang out with you, where they can work with you, where they can give you money, whatever.
So on Instagram and TikTok, I'm at Emm Cheeky, and on my Instagram and TikTok, you'll find a link to. I used to write, and I'm trying to get back into writing. There's a link to that, and there's also a link to my sexy page on Sunroom. So if you want to see me being even cuter and sexier, you can find me there. But Instagram is currently where it's at. We persevere, and that's where you'll find me talking about sex every single day.
Every single day. Thank you so much for being on the show. I would love to have you back to talk about like your sexy page and how that works and whatever. So
Absolutely.
We should set that up.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you so much for being here. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
A big thank you to my guest, Emm Cheeky. She'll be back. Go check out everything she is doing. If you're loving guests like Emm, if you're loving Sex Party, if you're still down to party, you want to do more shots, you want to show some love and appreciation for the podcast, how do you do that? If you're listening on platforms like Apple and Spotify, you can subscribe to the show. That's the most important part. You never miss a single episode. New episodes every Wednesday. You know this. There's some specials coming up. I mean, I wouldn't want to miss out on that if I were you. If you're watching on YouTube, hey, whoa, hey, put it down. If you're watching on YouTube, I love you. I see you. I appreciate you. If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel. You can like the video. You can comment on the video. You can comment on all the videos. We love that. I don't know who we is. It's just me here. But I am available, as always, in the DMs on Instagram. And I will see you right back here next week.
Thanks for listening. The party continues next week. Click subscribe and let's make this a regular thing. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at SexPartyFM. Follow Dustin at Dustin Rybka.